attack on Yemen, and President Trump said that any shot fired by the Houthis would be considered uh, shots fired at the behest of Iran, and Iran would be made responsible for that. Um, can you comment on how tense the situation is in terms of an escalation of war between Iran and the United States?
Obviously, what Trump says is nonsense because he is denying Ansarullah and the government of Yemen agency. They are independent and they are enforcing a blockade on shipping linked to the Israeli regime because they are, in their own words, implementing the Genocide Convention. And Iran supports them. Iran supports them and other parts of the axis of resistance. But Iran doesn't make decisions for Hezbollah, it doesn't make decisions for Hamas or Islamic Jihad or Ansarullah or Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces. So what Trump says is nonsense, and he cannot force the Yemeni armed forces to stop what they consider to be necessary to put pressure on the Israeli regime to stop the genocide. So what Trump is doing is he's trying to have an excuse both to bomb Yemen. So he's bombing Yemen in order to help the Israeli regime carry out genocide. He's killing people in Yemen to help the Israelis kill people in Palestine. That's basically it. And also he wants to use this as a means to put pressure on Iran, which is not going to work either. There is a possibility of military confrontation or military aggression, to put it more appropriately, by the United States against Iran. But Iran has already said that if the United States strikes, Iran will strike back harder. That's something that Ayatollah Khamenei said. So Iran is not going to be deterred from supporting Yemen. It's not going to be deterred from supporting the Palestinians or Hezbollah or any other member of the axis of resistance. And what the United States needs to do is to stop the genocide. Trump gave the green light for Netanyahu to tear up the ceasefire agreement. Witkoff gave the Israeli regime the green light to tear up the peace agreement or the ceasefire agreement. And Witkoff himself, he pretends as if it's the fault of Hamas, but Hamas was abiding by the ceasefire that he negotiated. But Witkoff himself and Trump want to allow the Israelis to violate the ceasefire. And then when Hamas doesn't accept that, they give the green light for the genocide to restart. This is the dystopian world that the United States has created for humanity.
Do you see this campaign in Yemen to be a very long one? I wrote to Helen Lechner to interview on Yemen. I mean, she is one of the person who knows the region so well, and she said that I'm right now traveling and I'd be able to do something on April 3. And I said, can't you do immediately because the moment is important? And she said that if my senses are correct, I see this campaign to go on for a long time. And it seems plausible because I don't see anyone stopping the Israelis from carrying out or continuing the genocide, and Ansar Allah would keep on responding. So if that's the case, and the American participation in genocide in Yemen this time, or bombing campaign in Yemen, is different from the previous campaign, because at that time they were doing it at the behest of the Saudis and the UAE, who are at best their allies. But now Tel Aviv is kind of their master, so their lunacy might be even more. So do you see this campaign to be a long one, and what implication that it would have on US-Iran relationship? Is any kind of normalization dead for the next 4 years?
It's difficult to say if it's going to be a long campaign because in war, things happen that are unexpected, and then everything changes. So it's very difficult to even predict what will happen next week. I think the intention of the United States is to continue bombing Yemen. And that will come at a great cost for the United States. Because remember, this is not their neighborhood. They have to, when they want to bomb, when they want to bring ships, it's very costly. They're spending billions of dollars effectively by striking, through striking Yemen. And the Yemeni military is very deeply entrenched underground because they've survived a decade of airstrikes and genocidal airstrikes. Just recently, a mutual friend of mine and yours said that, strictly speaking, what Yemen is doing is against international law because they're blocking international shipping, which I don't find this to be a valid argument because what the United States and the Israelis are doing is they're carrying out genocide. They're carrying out a Holocaust. They have no legitimacy. If we want to speak, very legalistically, the United States no longer has the regime in Washington has no legitimacy because of its actions in Gaza, and of course the same is true with the Israeli regime. So my understanding is that the regime in Washington, Trump, will continue these airstrikes because he is in full support of the genocide. He is a partner in this genocide. But the problem is that this could have consequences. Ultimately, those regimes that are complicit with the United States in our region, like Qatar, like the Emirates, like Saudi Arabia, like Bahrain, they may face severe consequences because they have enabled the United States to carry out airstrikes. US bases in these countries, in these entities, are being used for different purposes to wage war. And so at some point, Yemen may decide to punish these regimes. They may punish the Saudis. And as we all know, all of them are extremely vulnerable. All of them, except for Bahrain, all of them have huge oil or gas reserves, and they produce enormous amounts of oil or gas, and they are key to the global markets. So if Yemen decides to retaliate against one of these regimes, then that could change the equation completely. It may lead to further intensification. It may lead to the United States backing down. We don't know what's going to happen. But at least for now, I think that the United States will continue to bomb because the United States wants to make things as easy as possible for the Israeli regime to continue the slaughter.
Just to place on the record, the Warzone website says that a squadron of US B-2 Spirit stealth bombers are already in its way to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. For our viewers who don't know it, it's one of those 900 military bases for the United States across the world in the Indian Ocean. You mentioned about a mutual friend. I'm not sure who it was, but I want to
don't want you
mention.
to name that friend.
No,
I don't want to name.
but I want to mention someone, Scott Ritter, who has recently said that if the U.S. goes on a war with Iran, he said it would be a I'm blanking on what he said, but he said it would be a nation eliminating exercise or something. I don't remember the exact word. I wonder what your response to that, given you know him so well.
Well, we haven't met in person, but we have. I've been on his show a couple of times, and we follow each other. And I've watched his debates and discussions, and he's acquainted with what I have to say. First of all, this basically confirms what I was saying, that the United States has no legitimacy. It's an illegitimate regime. A regime that is willing to wipe out a nation has no place in the civilized world. And strictly speaking, it has no right to have a seat at the UN Security Council, let alone the General Assembly. That's because if we want to speak about law, then the fundamental law is the gravest violation of law is genocide and the Holocaust, which the Israeli regime is carrying out. So if the United States has such an intention towards Iran, that means that the United States has lost its legitimacy. That doesn't mean it's going to go away. I'm not saying that it's going to collapse. I'm just saying that such a regime has no legitimacy, just like the Israeli regime has no legitimacy.